but you know, when prehistoric men walking down the trail and saw a lion or something, he didn't want to stop and think about it. He just needed to get his legs going and get the heck out of there. So one of the things that happens, the amygdala actually shuts down the cortex when it gets activated, and that really is what happens to you in your early swimming experiences. That you become programmed not to think about, but to just react to what you sense going on. So your first lap, you're just limb turning to get to the other end, and you think, well, that's a really important part of swimming. And then you get to the other end, and pretty predictably, you are tired. So swimming is an exhausting ordeal, and obviously, the way to deal with that is training. So that's your own instinct. That's your own direct personal experience, and you come out of that with some thoughts about how swimming works, and then you come in contact with nearly any of the influences that are out there. Whether you watch a swim team or read an article about swim training, or talk to a swim coach, any of those typical exposures that you get to how to become a better swimmer. And you're exposed to what I call traditional swimming orthodoxy, which is what you might think of as a limbs, lungs, and muscles approach, which is all about strength and power and volume training and doing more and doing harder and so on. So where total immersion departs from traditional swimming orthodoxies because we've taught tens of thousands of what I call adult onset swimmers, probably 60 to 70% of whom were triathletes, is we recognize that humans really swim just like all other terrestrial mammals, dogs and deer and so on, which is holding the head high, churning, that's to avoid choking, and churning the limbs to avoid sinking. So terrestrial technique is really about avoidance of bad things. And what traditional swim methods do with the drills and the pulling and the kicking that you get, pulling and kicking sets, and the drills that you get from terrestrial or traditional coaches, is that they're really focused on trying to improve on terrestrial technique, and through tens of thousands of experiences working with adult onset swimmers, we've come to the conclusion that it's better to just throw out the terrestrial techniques and strive to emulate aquatic mammals instead. And that's really where the human brain comes in, because having a cerebral cortex, we have the ability to think through problems and come up with creative solutions. So aquatic technique is about problem solving and using creativity to do it. So once you've examined your mental model, then you can move on to step 2, which is to unlearn your terrestrial technique and your human swimming habits, and learn to emulate aquatic mammals. And over the years, we've evolved a skills sequence, or a triad of critical skills that can turn a human swimmer into a graceful, relaxed, effortless, non-fatiguing, fluent swimmer who can swim any distance without getting tired. And that is to go with the sequence of balanced skills first, and then using balance skills as the foundation, streamlining skills, and then propulsion skills. And if you think about aquatic mammals and fish, they are always balanced. They're always perfectly horizontal as they move through the water. They are always streamlined. They're designed for that. They don't have moving parts like humans do, but they have a tapered leading and trailing end, and they have a smooth shaft in between. They're just designed to move through the water with a minimum of resistance and turbulence. And then finally, the way they propel is they propel with whole body movements, either undulation or oscillation of the whole body. So So a technique for humans that's designed to emulate aquatic mammals should have all of those qualities and elements. And the thing to really understand is that all of those skills for a human swimmer are counterintuitive. They're not what we do instinctively or naturally. In fact, they run counter to our instincts. So in order to learn them, you have to be completely intentional. Everything you do, you have to be clear in why you're doing it, and you're at the end, why you're doing it, exactly what you're doing, what you're thinking about, and trying to accomplish. So learning those skills really does require you to take an approach that's both intentional and mindful. And so let's look at each of those skills one by one. So as I said, the foundational skill is in balance. And the very first thing is to understand what balance really is. Well, what the effect it has is for you to be comfortable, for you to feel supported by people, for you not to feel threatened. If you think about that very first lap you had, where you felt you had no choice but to turn your arms and legs, it's because you felt you were sinking. And you can understand from that that if you position yourself in the water in such a way that water then supports you, that fear of that fear of sinking, that sense of being at risk, and so on, that goes away. So it's really about getting comfortable in the water, getting in harmony with water, and really the start of what will be a lifetime of even a partnership with water. So the very first counterintuitive skill is that you don't fight gravity. You're always trying to stay on top of it. But in fact, the human body, in the way it's designed, only 5% of the body is meant to be on top of the surface, and 95% below the surface. So when you're trying to hold yourself up on top, you're getting tired trying to fight gravity. So the first thing you do to learn balance is learn to cooperate with instead of fighting gravity. And the first lesson, the first drill we teach, it's called Superman Glide, and the two first instructions we give in Superman Glide are to hang your head in hands. The second instruction we give in Superman Glide is to extend your body to cover the maximum amount of surface area, which improves the way in which you displace water. So it's simple principles of physics in which you do that. But again, when you are in that first fight or flight lap, you're actually feeling vulnerable. When you feel vulnerable, you get into protective sort of postures. You really don't feel free to open yourself up and extend yourself forward. So both of these things are completely counterintuitive.
So the other thing about, I got a question for you. Well, how would you respond to an athlete that, a lot of the triathlons we do in open water are wetsuit legals, and so does having a wetsuit give you that balance, and how does that impact training? Can you rely on that, for that sense of balance? How does that affect training?
Well, so there's no question that when you're wearing neoprene, your buoyancy is greater. The tendency for the legs to sink is less. But it obviously, when you take the wetsuit off, that's going to go away. So when you're learning balance, you're not only countering the tendency of the body to sink. You're also, as part of the drill sequence or skill building sequence through which we teach balance, we're teaching some other things that a wetsuit will not address. So, for instance, head-spine alignment, keeping the head in a neutral position, aligning the spine, and we found that the nerves that come out of the spine and go to everywhere in the body, they innervate much more fully when you're in an aligned position than when you're not in an aligned position. So it's not simply a matter of being able to put on the wetsuit. And then as one triathlete said, I can survive this swim with my wetsuit.
Right.
We're trying to go far beyond just surviving the swim during the triathlon, but really teach people to have, to feel in harmony with their environment, to feel skilled, to feel confident, to feel like they're making progress and so on. So obviously, if wetsuit is legal and everybody else is wearing one, it's certainly not wear the wetsuit. But balance is really, it's a very holistic thing for your swimming, and I think you're really going to be doing 95% of your swimming in practice without a wetsuit. Don't you want to enjoy it? Don't you want to feel great and enjoy it? Absolutely. That would be my argument in favor of learning balance even with therapists. Great. So, and then finally, the way in which we have people learn balance is designed not just to affect how the body is positioned in the water, but the whole process is designed to affect you at the emotional and psychic level as well. So the activities that we have people do, it's low movement frequency, low heart rate, breathing frequency, very targeted thoughts, and so on. These are all known to have to access the alpha brainwave state. Cognitive specialists call the super learning state. They put the brain in its most receptive state for learning new skills. They stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, which is what studies have shown yoga does. And it gives you a great feeling of well-being. It makes you want to do this thing again. So that's a very, very positive thing to come away with. Motivation to do this, not just because you're going to do a better triathlon, because you really enjoy doing it. And then finally, these activities quiet the amygdala and they empower the cerebral cortex. And as you go through the rest of the skills, you're really going to make use of that. So from balance, we move to the sort of streamlining. And that picture there, see on the screen is above, and with the colorful tights, it's Shinji Takeuchi, and below Shinji is me. And what's interesting about that picture is that Shinji and I had that photograph taken in the Bahamas. We got together and doing some swimming in open water, swimming in a channel and swimming over the bridge. That's how the picture was taken. And we have developed our strokes. We have practiced all these techniques. 3,000 miles away, usually in California, except for he's in Tokyo. So we were not practicing together. We did not develop our techniques together, although I did teach them to them. And when we got together to swim on this day, you can see that we look like mirror images, like wind, almost like doing synchronized swimming, all really kind of synchronized strokes. So, the takeaway from that is that while nothing about this is natural and everything that you learn in this sequence, in this process, is counterintuitive, it is very much a learnable style that has elements you can recognize. And by the way, many of you probably know Shinji, and in June he became the most popular swimmer on YouTube, passing Michael Phelps becomes the #1 swimmer on YouTube, which is pretty remarkable considering that Michael Phelps started to swim at 7 and did countless millions of yards, and Shinji started to swim at the well-ripened age of 37. And that picture was taken just about 3 or 4 years after he started MCI. So what you see there is a really good illustration of streamline, that the two of us have long, sleek body lines, our legs are close together. The length of that line, patient that you see, the position in which we hold our recovery arms and so on are all thoughtfully designed to move you through the water with the least resistance and to keep the body line stable. So during the time of recovering our right arm, as you see there, we have to be able to hold the left side of the body, the extended side of the body, really streamlined and stable. So that's passive streamlining is forming a shape for your body that's less like a human shape and more like a dolphin shape. So if you just take away that arm, or think of it as a fin, you can actually see our bodies are pretty well dolphin shaped and not characteristically the way you associate a human body looking at the water. And then active streamlining, if you look again at this, you can see that there's very little waves, no splash, hardly leaving a wake, and so on. So that's what active streamlining it is. It's that as you move, or as you move on some lakes, your focus is more on how you move in such a way as to minimize drag and turbulence, and less of your focus on how you use ponds and lakes to create propulsion. So those are the key ideas about streamlining. And then finally, that takes us to the third skill of confusion, which is propulsion, how you move yourself forward. And the two principles that we are teaching in propulsion, first of all, and this is going back again to the idea that humans can be as much as 97% inefficient. In other words, 97% of our energy gets diverted into something other than locomotion. And so the first principle is that you learn to be aware of available forces, existing forces, and you try to make use of those forces as much as possible in channeling them as part of your effort to move forward. And then a secondary thing, a supplementary thing, you're going to align your muscular force with the existing forces. So make full use of existing forces between spending power before spending energy and generating muscular force. Obviously, you do that, but you're examining your stroke to say, what's the lightest way I can press on the water and pull? What's the lightest way I can kick to accomplish what I'm looking for? And how much can I make use of gravity, the density, the buoyancy, the natural buoyancy that exists in my body, body mass, and how I'm going to do weight shifts and so on. Now, I should say right here, since we're talking about triathlon, if I was training someone to swim the 100 meters, something that was going to be over in a minute or less, I would still be focused on this. But the fact is that when we're talking about triathlon, it becomes far more important because you don't want to use up your energy in the water. You want to save heartbeats to spend on land because you get a far greater payback. So really taking this approach is even more important to a triathlete than to almost any other sport. And the second key principle about propelling efficiently is that you learn to work with and not against the water. So, for instance, when I enter my hand into the water, I slice my hand into the water and extend it, what I'm thinking about there is separating water molecules ahead of me so that I can slide my streamlined body line through a sort of human-sized sleeve that I cut and I extended on. But then the next thing I'll do is I'll move my hand in position to push the water back, and I'm not really thinking so much about pushing the water back as I am about holding my place with that hand so I can use my weight shift on the next stroke to move me past that place. And so when I'm thinking about holding my place with that hand to move past that hand, rather than pushing that water back, then I'm really conscious of all the water behind my arm, behind my hand, of being a ball of water molecules. And as I press on it, I take care to press in such a way that I'm keeping those molecules still. I don't want to move the molecules around. I want to move my body forward. So as you can see from these two examples, this is really completely counterintuitive. These are not things that you think of naturally. And so because this is counterintuitive and non-instinctive, then step 3 is learning what are the styles and means of practice that let you learn to do something that you don't do well naturally, and that is a type of practice called deep or deliberate practice. So in step 1, you're forming a new mental model of swimming. In step 2, you're understanding the physical skills and movement skills, and then in step 3, you're thinking about practicing swimming in a different way. And here I should say that I have not use the word workout to describe what I do in well over 20 years. And when I was my coach teams, I told my coaches as well, I told all TI coaches we should never use the word workout, but we should always use the word practice to describe what we do. So the elements of deep practice is to, when you stand at the edge of the pool, about to go in and spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever you decide to do, that your clear intention, your most important intention as you stand there is that when you get out of the pool 30 minutes or an hour later, you're going to be a better swimmer. You're going to be a swimmer who has higher level skills. So your focus is on improving skill and not how many yards or how many heartbeats you spend in that time. And secondly, that you design your tasks that you do, whether they're skill improvement tasks or wiring in a sense of pace or any of those things, that you create smart feedback. That you know how you're going to measure the thing you're doing and whether you're accomplishing the task you set out to do. And of course, then there's that the saying, what gets measured gets improved. So knowing what to measure. The first thing, for instance, is to measure your efficiency by counting strokes. It's a simple thing. The next point is that you are tirelessly looking for weak points and errors and developing strategies to correct those. So, those are the principles of deep practice, and I think that's my last slide, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. That's fantastic. As I mentioned, just your whole approach to swimming in general, and I told you, privately on the phone, and that you have been foundational in my approach to triathlon training. And when I look at the difference that you've made, in my swimming and our athletes, and just the approach to fitness, swimming and triathlon training, it's just been enormous with the purposeful, I guess the willingness to challenge the status quo, challenge the way people are doing it just because they've always done it that way, but really think about it analytically, and wanted to kind of carry that forward to triathlon training in general, and talk about many of the same principles that that you just illustrated. As aquatic or as terrestrial mammals, doing an aquatic sport, it does take a very different approach when you're practicing swim. But when we do move to the land, it is work and working out in those sessions, and there are things that are much more efficient just because we're made to live and move on land. But needless to say, that the same approach should be taken in how we approach getting better and how we train. So I want to walk through in much the same format as what you just did, so that our attendees are able to make those same kind of gains and enjoy the sport and have intentional, purposeful workouts that they're benefiting from and enjoying. Triathlon is a lifestyle sport, and it's a little different. Just up front, briefly, most of the time when you hear a training system of any kind, it generally involves a coach or person or an athlete that's had some success. Talk about philosophies or principles or just a general, here's the things that I believe. And when you go looking, you'll see there's other people that may be just as accomplished or as successful with very contrary thoughts or beliefs. And so there's such a pervasive culture out there of things that are just based on vague concepts and guidelines. And I kind of want to inspect some of those today, kind of challenging them into model. But first, that's what the triathlon, the Triathletes training system is for triathlon training. It is a one-of-a-kind patent pending, actually filed international patents. It's the process that we go through to design programs is very innovative and is unlike anything out there. So there's a systematic design process that produces these massive gains for our athletes and gives them the most results per training hour invested in. I love what you mentioned on your very last slide of what gets measured gets improved, and that's what we've found. Operating in a training environment where nothing's visible and you don't have visibility to what's going on during training. It's not defined and standardized. It's not observable. It's not measurable. Therefore, it can't be repeatable or improvable. And just like that's the key for practicing the swim technique, is you have to have a specific strategy to predict. And I've heard you talk before about having a stroke thought. So every stroke you take should be purposeful, and you should be thinking on improving something specifically. So in looking at, the first step one here for triathlon training, examining your mental model, the same thing. Let's look at just a handful. There's so many things out there, but here are three of the things I would call myths or that you hear a lot of, and people have this mental model of, if I try really hard, effort equals improvement, no pain, no gain. If I experience pain in my workout and push and hurt, I'm automatically going to improve. Or the more I can endure pain, the more I'm going to improve. And that's just not true. And similar to that, a lot of people, looking at the long, slow distance, or their views toward base training or volume, they think that more is better. Simply by doing something, an activity, for a long amount of time, doing it more makes you better. And that's not always true. I like the marketing saying out there. It's a quote that a lot of business people know that 50% of their marketing doesn't work. They just don't know what 50. But that's why you call them a marketing consultant. To tell you, to help you. How do I see what's working? How am I communicating my message? And that's the way a lot of triathletes train. Is that they know that everything they're doing, they don't have a purpose. They're not sure why they're doing it. They don't know what to cut. And we found with visibility to the Triathletes system that about 40% of most athletes' training time is completely wasted and actually harmful. It hinders their performance. And if they're able to eliminate that training and replace some of that training with more purposeful, they can actually get better results on fewer training hours.
Okay, if I could interject something, Jeff, that really resonates with me when you talk about it's not just wasted time, but harmful to you physically, because I just am seeing lately, in so many places, articles about the non-healthful effects of extreme training and causing oxidative stress and things like that. It seems like it's really a very current topic.
Absolutely. It manifests itself in so many different ways. Some is, well, actually, I'll get to another slide in just a second where we drill down on that a bit, and it's pretty fascinating. When you think of some of the time spent training, the athletes are actually detraining and harming themselves, so they're decreasing fitness, with all the volume of the way that they're doing the training. And a key to avoiding that is obviously not looking at the wrong metrics. So a lot of athletes are focused on meaningless metrics. They'll have this weekly miles or total training hours or a number of sessions per week. These arbitrary numbers that are measurable. They are numbers, and you can count them up in mileage, but they set those as their primary training goals. I need to get to running 60 hours a week, or 60 miles a week, or have some pros in these high volumes, and that becomes the goal, not the purpose and the nature of every single session. And if those purposeful sessions that you're able to do in a healthy way benefit, you physically, and you're able to recover from, if that total 60, then so be it. But having these meaningless metrics driving your training it's senseless and harmful. So looking at the long run focus is where I see it the most. We were talking about that quote that you've seen. A lot of athletes want to get faster, and so they'll say, I want to be a faster runner, so I'm going to train for a marathon. And a lot of them do this in the out season. And they spend hours and hours running very, very slowly with very bad form. So they end up, habituating bad form. Most age groupers can maintain good running form for no more than about 40 to 60 minutes, and then their form drastically deteriorates. So when they're doing these long runs, they're habituating their muscle firing, the innervation, and the sequence in which their muscles fire is doing it improperly. They start compensating with other muscles. So they actually spend more of that training time detraining their body, teaching themselves to run slower than they do repeating. Plus, it increases injury risk, and it decreases their ability to recover from their other training sessions during the week.
Well, I tell you, with the exception of injury risk, it's exactly the way I feel about plodding through long yardage sessions.
it's crazy unless you have a purposeful intent to doing that.
Yeah.
We have a saying to help people kind of see the I guess to understand this better. Long, slow running produces long, slow runners. When you're out there as a terrestrial being, a mammal, and you're teaching your body to do it in that way, that's what you're practicing. Your body is practicing running slowly. You're practicing with those fatigue muscles in that form, and then that's on race day. That's what you're gonna do. Another one of those, I'll drill down on just for a second, is this notion of base training being high volume. This very pervasive out there, and the number of people that in periodized training, a lot of people have come to associate the base period as high volume. Base equals high volume, when that's not what base training means. Base training is any purposeful period that creates a foundation from which the next phase or the next training block you'll be able to perform better, or you'll be able to resist injury better. So it just prepares you for the next one. That may include increasing volume, but it may not. It may include decreasing volume, putting more emphasis on any number of training variables. But over time, the general thought out there, what people see and hear is base training means high volume, and that it just couldn't be further from the truth. So when looking at what people look at, a lot of people are looking at data in their training and trying to be purposeful. But the data out there is a point-in-time snapshot data. It's, say a data point is, getting a power file of your heart rate monitor, or any static one-time data point. And trying to draw conclusions about your training from that is very dangerous. You need to be able to connect the dots. So what is it during, race on data point 1 and a race on data point 2, or time trials, or any type of assessment? Getting visibility into what goes on between is key. And currently, when I first got into the sport, there's just nothing out there, nothing to define what that looks like. Again, other than just total hours, total volume, total number of sessions. And so it makes it impossible to have visibility, to know what to observe, what to manage, if it's not even defined or quantified in any way, other than those vague terms. And so, Terry, what I see is coaches and athletes out there just relying on these generic concepts and theories and principles, and they're just perpetuating the things that they hear other people do. So what we try to do, is determine through a systematic approach is what is true, from the Twain quote. So what just ain't so? And many of these principles, the base training, the high miles, the long, slow running, there's so many things that are out there, and it's just because there hasn't been a way to gain visibility to test if it's true. And I think of Galileo, before he came, he's the guy who's responsible for inventing the telescope, but he also was the one who challenged the thought or the belief at that point. One of the things that they knew for sure was that heavy items fall faster than lighter items. And he just didn't believe that, and he tested it. So he was the first one, and legend goes that he's got up on the Leaning Tower of Pisa and dropped a heavy object on a light object. And, from that point on, what was previously insanely obvious, that this is the way it is, and here's how things behave, after he did that, it totally changed forever the way that we approach many things from a physical. And that was just something that could be quantified and observed, but just having that insight and that visibility causes you to look at things totally differently. Without a systematic way, it's impossible to determine what's so and what just ain't so without measurable variables, constants, standards, definition, repeatable methodology, and sufficient sample data. If you mentioned you worked with literally tens of thousands of swimmers, and you developed your techniques and your drills and what you tell them and how you describe them in the mental concepts, the cues that they're looking at, to help them incorporate those things. And unless you can apply something in a standard, definable way, and I know, Terry, you've also coined terms and phrases and created words for things that didn't previously exist. And without doing so, you can't speak a common language. You can't do things systematically, repeatably, and improve them. Eloquently described how swimming works. we're going to look at how training works. We'll have a little fun in a second with this. Basically, there's training variables, and most athletes out there only focus on intensity, and they don't even focus on duration. It's that distance. They're going up, I need to go on a 5-mile run. But there's also frequency, sequence, and technique, and how you do these things dramatically affects the benefits that you get from the training. And your body really, when you think about it, it doesn't know how much distance passes under your legs, your feet, and your bike or running. It just knows at what intensity are you exerting and for what duration. And we're talking about work here now. We're not talking about the technique and the practice of the ingraining neural responses to correcting form. But from a fitness, metabolic, aerobic standpoint, these are the variables that you have to work with. And in doing so, you can't apply those variables without knowing and considering all of the parameters for every single athlete. So what makes a great workout makes a variable mix for a workout or a session for one athlete could be very harmful and counterproductive for another when you're taking into account performance ability, relative performance differences between the disciplines, their gender, their weight, their age, their sport age, how long they've been in the sport, and so many other things. Body composition is another huge one. So I want to drill out on this a little bit and have fun. You're gonna laugh, but this is a little short clip from a movie. It's My Cousin Vinny. I'm sure everybody's seen it. It's been about 20 years since this came out. But it's going to teach us a lot in a very short time about how training works. Set up the clip. It's the show. Joe Pesci is an attorney. He's trying his very first case. He's from up in the Northeast, and he's come down to represent his cousin, played by Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid, and his friend. They're there in the background in the clip. And they got arrested for allegedly murdering a store clerk in a deep south country town. So Vinny is cross-examining a witness who claims to have seen the boys go into and out of the store right before and after the time of the shooting. So he's starting to cross-examine the witness.
Is it possible the two defendants entered the store, picked 22 specific items off of the shelves, had the clerk take money, make change, then leave? Then two different men drive up in a similar, don't shake your head, I'm not done yet with the whole thing, so you can understand this. Two different men drive up in a similar looking car, go in, shoot the clerk, rob him, and then leave?
No, they didn't have enough time.
Well, how much time was they in the store?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Are you sure? Did you look at your watch? Oh, I'm sorry. You testified earlier that the boys went into the store and you had just begun to make breakfast. You were just ready to eat and you heard a gunshot. That's right. I'm sorry. So obviously it takes you 5 minutes to make breakfast.
That's right.
Right, so you knew that. Do you remember what you had?
Eggs and grits.
Eggs and grits. I like grits too. Instant grits?
No self-respecting Southerner uses instant grits. I take pride in my grits.
So, Mr. Pitt, how could it take you 5 minutes to cook your grits when it takes the entire grit-eating world 20 minutes?
I don't know. I'm a fast cook, I guess.
I'm sorry, I was all the way over here. I couldn't hear you. Did you say you're a fast cook? That's it? Are we to believe that boiling water soaks into a grit faster in your kitchen than on any place on the face of the earth?
I don't know.
Well, perhaps the laws of physics cease to exist on your stove. Were these magic grits? I mean, did you buy them from the same guy who sold Jack his beanstalk beef?
Objection, Your Honor. Objection sustained.
Are you sure about that 5 minutes? Are you sure about that 5 minutes?
I don't know. I think you made your point.
Are you sure about that 5 minutes?
I may have been mistaken.
I love that little clip right there. There's so many great one-liners in there. Does water soak into a grit faster on your stove than any place else on the earth? And yeah, his response, I'm just a fast cook. Have you seen that movie, Terry?
Yeah, I go ahead and happy to see a clip from it again.
Well, you know that talking about grits and just there are these physical laws that govern things when you're looking for these reactions. I know as you're talking through the neural response with the nervous system and the cerebral cortex and the amygdala, and there's things that have to happen, and they are in play, whether we understand them, whether we agree to them, and it's not a matter of just trying really hard, like the witness talked about. I'm just a fast cook. I mean, you can't just circumvent things. So, there is a science to triathlon training. Looking at grits, you all thought I was joking when I said that clip is going to teach us about triathlon training. But looking at this instructions right here, grits. The instructions: 3 to 4 quart saucepan, bring 4.5 cups of water seasoned with 1 teaspoon salt or boil, stir in 1 cup of grits. Continue stirring, reduce heat. I mean, if you notice all of these things that are written out, and it's a very simple, one-item dish, but when you look at it from the same standpoint that you might look at a training session, and look at the training variables with intensity, duration, frequency, sequence, and technique. Even in this simple example, you're looking at intensity. There's specific times and places where you change the intensity. You bring it to a boil, you reduce the heat to low, and then you remove completely from heat later. Duration, talking about bringing it to a boil over a certain amount of time, and how long once it is to that low heat. You keep it there for 20 minutes and then serve it hot immediately after. Looking at frequency, you continue to stir or stir frequently. There's a sense of that variable. With sequence, all these steps are numbered. You can't take these out of context. You can't do 5, then 2, then 3, 1, 4, and 6. It matters, the sequence in which you perform these different steps. And then technique, talking about beating or stirring or slowly stirring. Those things make a difference as well, and they're specifically mentioned in here. Thinking about all those training variables, and applying that to training, how you have a lot of athletes who have that no pain, no gain, that effort equals intensity, and they approach it like the witness saying, I'm just a fast cook, as if the belief that they could just turn up the heat all the way and somehow it cooks faster, or water soaks into a grit faster by something that you can just circumvent the natural laws of physics. Same thing from the long, slow distances, high volume. Just do a bunch of it. If you were to throw the grits into the saucepan and turn the heat to low and just left it for 2 days, that's not going to cook. It just doesn't make sense to do that. You're looking for these chemical and physical reactions that are happening. And the examples and analogies can go on and on for the different attitudes toward training in general. And when you further introduce the physical parameters, not just the variables, but the athlete's age, weight, body composition, amount of time in the sport, all these other things, like looking at regular grits versus instant grits, or 1 cup, to the sense of proportion and body composition, what is good and effective for one athlete of one body type or size or weight or age, or all of those things matter in the makeup and the composition of their body and affect how long and how the training, those variables are applied. You even have a teaspoon of salt in here, so there's the electrolytes in this example. So the point is that there's no single recipe for fitness, that it changes when you change the parameters. 2, that there is a purposeful and a science behind it, and our bodies are much more complex, obviously, than bowl of grits. And a random or a non-intentional approach to training has not only is it not going to cook anything that you want to eat, but there is the risk in there of scorching and burning and causing injury. So bottom line is specific training produces specific results. And I've heard it said out there a lot of the time, work works, the belief that working hard. But really, it's the right work works, doing the right work. That there's no just generic recipe for fitness, that specific things have to happen. So there's that intentionality to it. And that takes us to the second step, which is doing the right work. And that involves one, your performance measures, measuring those effectively, because it really matters your abilities in the different disciplines. Then applying your physical parameters, the body weight, age, all of those things, to produce, when mixed with the training variables in a specific way, to produce your training program. And in TriDot, we have a scale for performance ability to where we do have a systematic way of assessing fitness through time trials and assessments, where we can apply those same assessment results from athletes of every ability and every age and quantify their heart rate and all these things that happen, their body composition and exactly what happened for all of these different assessments. And the scale goes 0 to 85. So a 0 would be a very slow time or performance, very low ability, and the fastest would be up to 85. Our professional athletes are generally from 67 to about 75. 85 would be world class for that specific discipline. So what this does is it provides a whole lot of meaning and a whole lot of useful information. One, you can not only see which is your stronger and weaker discipline, so you're not just looking at a past a race and saying, oh, here's how I did, or I was ranked this way on this past race, therefore this is stronger than the other, or I've been running for a long time, therefore that's my strength, or a reigning college. So you're not making these subjective. You can quantify and know exactly which is your stronger discipline. But you can also tell to what degree that it's different and apply that to the race duration. How long are you going to be in the race, and what kind of improvement can you expect for someone with your physical parameters to go through a systematic training process where we know those outcomes and we can have a predictive performance gain, and how much difference is that going to make on race day. So then we can very intentionally shift your training and focus where you're going to have the greatest ROI for the short-term race and then long-term development in the sport. So there's a lot of ways that we can combine these different data points to produce very intelligent tools that we can use to design training. And looking at what we call factors. Okay, so it's not enough just to look at your actual performance and how fast you do something. Take a run TriAthletes of 44. So that's a standalone 5K of 22 minutes, 15 seconds. So if you were to ask someone, hey, is that a good time? A lot of people just compare it to themselves as a first reference point. And as a standalone, some people that are a lot slower than that would say, that's awesome. I'd love to have that. Then, a higher level age grouper that's very competitive might say, that's not too bad. It's mediocre. So for a athlete A, that's a 21-year-old, 5'9", 130-pound cross-country runner. That 22-minute 5K is not very good, and there's a whole lot of opportunity for improvement. But if I were to show you, athlete B, 54-year-old, 6'2", 230-pound athlete, a 22-minute 5K, that's very good. So when you approach you have the same data point that you started with, a standalone 5K, an assessment of that fitness. But with this additional information, you have totally different expectations on the likely and predictable improvement that they're going to get and how much difference that'll make on race day. So that allows you to more intentionally design their training program. So it matters very much, what you do during each session. If I was to, throw this question, we're not going to get deep into workload and strength, training stress, and how to measure those. But if I were to ask, which 60-minute session would be more productive? 60 minutes on a trainer session indoors, or 60 minutes out on the road, open highway. The truth is that this is a very generic rule of thumb because a lot of other things matter, but in general, the trainer session is about 50% more effective than the outdoor ride. And it's because of what happens during that session. It just matters not in the least how much ground, how much pavement passes beneath you, or how much time elapses. When you're out on the road, you're coasting, you're stopping for traffic lights, detouring, or decelerating at lights, stopping. So there's all these things that happen. Versus indoors, none of that happens. So you have complete control, and you're actually able to get more work done during the same amount of time, regardless of hours or how much ground may pass beneath you. So this is a very simplistic way of looking at it, but what happens during each session is incredibly important, and it matters very much on the athlete's performance abilities and their parameters. And we use green zones. This is a little different way of thinking. A lot of athletes are very used to thinking of training zones or paces or heart rate zones when they're doing the workouts. And as Terry mentioned, swimming practice, that's one of the last things for most athletes they should be thinking about ever. Is more ingraining the efficiency and the purposeful practice rather than the work that they do, because it's so technique and finesse focused and not fitness focused. But when the training that you're doing is fitness focused and you are looking for that training response, staying in what we call green zones is critical. I'll show you a few things. A lot of athletes are very familiar with this horizontal axis over here, having different training zones based on each intensity, and the training zones for each intensity. That green zone is different based on the type of training response you're trying to stimulate, and that intensity to do that. So most athletes are very familiar with a power zone, a heart rate zone, or a perceived exertion. But when it comes to intensity, but when it also you blend intensity and duration at the same time, so you're doing a certain intensity, and how long do you do that intensity, or how long do you endure it at that specific intensity to stay in that green zone without going into a red zone, which increased dramatically injury risk, and there's a very sharp decline in beneficial adaptations that happen at that point. So the first threshold is doing enough training that's going to stimulate the response you're looking for, but not doing so much training going into the red zone that's going to decrease the benefit but increase the injury risk. And so staying in that green zone is critical, and a lot of it's done by combining numbers and looking at the combination of intensity duration, but also managing that at a sub-session level. So rather than doing a single session at a certain intensity, is breaking that down into intervals that are intensity specific and how long those intervals are, and the rest intervals between each one, and the rest intensities, either complete rest or partial rest, is incredibly valuable. You can get a lot more work done in a shorter amount of time by managing the training stress and the workload with very purposeful and specific training. And that's one of the fundamental ways that the Triathlete system works to help you do those things and manage them rather than just relying on very vague guesswork and approximations. And without a systematic approach, you just can't discern what those green zones are. Moving on to looking at a couple other pretty high-level performance abilities and the relationship between them is power and stamina. There's a whole lot of terms out there for power and speed, muscular endurance, muscular power, and all these different ways of looking at it. And it can get pretty complex. But really, it boils down to just a couple when you're looking at fitness training. One is threshold power, which is what you can do in a 1 hour all-out effort. And the second is stamina. So at a target duration, a specific intensity for a target duration longer than 1 hour. And the threshold power is encompassing both the fitness and the lactate threshold, ventilatory threshold, or the threshold all occur about the same place, but also your efficiency ability. How fast can you go at that intensity? And then stamina is a fraction of that. So the relationship is always the threshold power is the long tempo, and stamina is always a portion of that. And so when you're doing your training, you're always trying to get your threshold power to increase because that's the top end of what your stamina has the potential to do. So at an Ironman distance, maybe at 67 to 73% of your threshold power is what your potential for a stamina development is. And so until you increase that ceiling, that lower level stamina will never be able to increase. So you can create this floor. And so it's managing both of those together and doing so in a very purposeful way. The priority of doing them is always threshold first and then stamina. A lot of people with the high volume approach are just stamina, stamina, stamina. When you're doing that much volume, required to do that kind of training, those sessions are extremely long, and it's just impossible to meaningfully improve your threshold while you're also carrying a very high stamina ability just because of the hours and the calories and the energy involved in maintaining that ability. So a good rule of thumb and a way to think about it is fast before far and strong before long. So think of developing your speed and your strength and power before you go far or long, and then it's much easier to do. And overall, it allows you to train on fewer hours because you don't increase that stamina until you're ready to use it in a race. So it's the key months before the race is where you move up that stamina ability, but the rest of the time you're working primarily on threshold power. So specific training produces specific results. The right work works. So the secret ingredient, the secret weapon in triathlon training is intelligence and coming with an approach to training that is purposeful and that can produce repeatable results, not based on guessing or generic things, but on very specific things. And that starts with, here we're at step 3, using a systematic approach to your triathlon training. So measuring meaningful metrics that are comprehensive, standardized, and normalized, that mean the same thing across thousands of athletes and training cycles, and where you can correlate cause and effects relationships because you have visibility to what's going on between the snapshot data points, assessments, or races. And then a phase-based approach is also key to look at the long term and what you're doing and not go week to week or event to event and change your training based on each one of those. And lastly, managing the training variables based on the cause and effect relationship from actual data and not guesswork. Looking at the phase-based approach, a lot of athletes do exactly that. They'll jump from a lily pad approach, is where they'll radically change their training from race to race or week to week or month to month with no continuity of what's before or what's after or any rhyme or reason to it. And generally, as triathletes, just like in swimming, you're wanting to continue the same progression over a lifetime. You want to get better at all disciplines all the time. And so taking more of a locomotive approach to where you're setting your sights on an end goal and a destination, and you're building steam in that direction. You're able to do all smaller, different races along the way, but there's a continuity that keeps you guided and progressing in the right way and keeps you healthy. So if you think of phases as purposeful blocks of training, generally from 8 to 16, 18 weeks, but each phase builds on the prior phase. It prepares you for what's happening during the phase and leads up and prepares you for the next phase. So it's this longer-term continuity of data and intent and a purposeful nature by which you approach training. So just to recap those steps, so challenging your mental model, critically examine that, throw out things that just aren't so, doing the right work, doing what needs to happen as it needs to happen based on your numbers, your performance, and your physical parameters, not any just random training. And then using a systematic approach for your triathlon training with meaningful metrics, with a phase-based long-term approach where you're applying those over many phases, many seasons, and a lifetime. The end of that result is a healthy athlete that's happy, enjoying the sport, and progressing and achieving their goals. So that's kind of a wrap up or a synopsis, I guess, of how to approach in a methodical way triathlon training. So Terry, I do think going through this that a lot of the folks on the call are going to be able to see a lot of similarities in how our approaches to training and yours to swimming are very similar. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely, in listening to you go through your way of thinking about training, the way you break down the problem, the way you pursue solutions to the problem, I see the same. I see an awful lot of simpatico in terms of really helping the athlete know what works, to do only what works, to not waste time on things that are not measurable, the long activity and so on. So, the amount of overlap is really considerable, and from that perspective, I'm very pleased to be able to recommend your program to people who are fans of TI, because I think they will see a similarity in the way we think.
Definitely, I really appreciate that. And again, I do want to thank you, one, for being an innovator and a leader in the industry with your approach, because that definitely, it's going back 10 years, but it definitely impacted me. What do you see as, from the athletes that you've worked with and some of the things about the tryout system that is likely to be different? I know your ears probably perk up the most when they're talking swimming-related stuff, but I know that in conversation they have to discuss other, what they're doing on the land.
I think the main thing is simply not to do mindless volume, mindless intensity, but to really try to have very good reasons to know why you're doing something, to know very clearly what the connection between efforts and outcomes will be, and to be pretty rigorous about that. That's really the main thing.
Well, Terry, I just think that is so absolutely true. You have to be rigorous and have a relentless pursuit of doing things intentionally and being very conscious of how to connect the dots, how to connect the effort to the desired race result. Do that in a methodical way. But honestly, for me, it didn't start out that way at all. As a confession, what Tryout is today, it started as just a sheer personal pursuit, just for my own benefit. I was back when I got into the sport, I was a young dad. I had a wife and 3 kids, and I just wanted to excel in the sport. I was always competitive. I had an athletic background, and I just wanted to do well, but I didn't want that to consume my whole life, and I didn't want that pursuit and that desire to enjoy the sport and fitness and all that to hinder my family and my other responsibilities in my career. So very early on, I set out on a personal little mission to find out as much as I could about triathlon training and triathlon science, and see how I could best accommodate both, best pursue both of those, be competitive, and achieve those goals, but still do so in a way that's responsible for my family. It was just so, God, so I say infuriating and so saddening back then to see so many athletes and training buddies and friends who the same triathlon or Ironman ate my marriage, and the devastation that the sport was taking on people relationally, but then physically with the injuries and overtraining, and then just the all-consuming nature of it. I mean, it can be a lifestyle sport, but it can still be in balance, and that's what I committed to. My family, all the other things were so important to me that I was just not going to sacrifice them. But I didn't want to let go of the competitiveness and the performance that was deep inside of me either. So I started out, I literally devoured every training resource that I could find. I got on the internet, everything. I actually got certified USA triathlon coaching and USA cycling, and with no intention at all of coaching anyone else. I didn't have this big grandiose, want a desire to help others. It was just strictly personal. But I just found, so much frustration in that when it came to form training, I was honestly swimming before my first triathlon, and it's so much effort and so exhausting of an experience that the guy in the lane next to me actually paused his workout, looked over, and stopped me for a second and asked me if I'd ever heard of TI. And I said, T what? I didn't know. I had no idea. But he was so gracious and so concerned about me that he paused what he was doing to tell me that there's a better way to doing what you're doing. You're spending all this energy and you're exhausted, and I was hanging on the side of the pool. I couldn't get out. Just my arms were so tired. But he would pause and tell me that, and I went to the website, and it was just literally life-changing for me at the time. But when it came to devouring all the resources relating to the fitness side of things, not the form side, there just wasn't anything like that. There was no methodical approach like you have, Terry, with the drills and the definition of here's what you do and here's your alignment, here's what it should be, this is wrong and this is right, and it just wasn't like that. There was experts out there that were saying one thing. One expert would just broadly apply these concepts and principles to every athlete. Every solution was, every problem was the same solution, and others had the same circumstances, but they all have a different solution. I said that just can't be. And when I started, inspecting further, I really began to categorize everything that I found with fitness-related training was in 2 categories. One was the cookie cutter approach. It was these big plan factories that churn out a ton of, by the small, medium, and large Ironman or half Ironman plan or Olympic plan, the beginner, intermediate, advanced, and the same thing fit everybody. And I just knew that could not be right. Everybody's, body composition and performance and background and age, those matter. Those have to matter. And that's why people are getting hurt, and that's why they're doing so much training and they're not getting better. And that's what I experienced. I was right there. And then the other scenario I saw was the whole guesswork. There was people that were, way smarter than I am, that, physiology, all these degrees, but they were applying that knowledge in a random manner. There was no definition in the industry around workload, what that was, what training stress was, what we should measure during the week, during the month, during each mesocycle. What are those metrics, and how do you do that at the sub-session level, and how does your race day duration relate to your longest single session, and how much should that be, how many weeks before your race, and all these things. There was just no definition and no normalization or standardization, and it was just frustrating for me not to be able to know what to do and to confidently move forward. And then somewhere in that quest for knowledge, I just began to see this opportunity to add value and to innovate, and since then it's just been a mission, and that's what TriAthletes has become. It didn't start out with, hey, here's my philosophies, here's what I think, and I'm going to pursue things in a way that defines it, that makes that true or makes that a reality or substantiates that. It's let's just see what works, and let's do things and do it in a methodical way where we can have visibility and create a way that we can improve and know what is that relationship, what is the connection between effort and outcome. And I was just became a passion and an excitement within me, not for just the difference that it made in my own life, being able to compete. I've done 4 Ironman on no more than 12 hours training in any week, a 12-hour Ironman, and 12-hour finishes. With that balance in my life, being able to do that. I'm 200 pounds. So I'm not, a smaller athlete, and being able to do that on 12 hours training a week, that's just, it makes the sport doable. It makes it enjoyable. It keeps it healthy and fun, and without the injury and all those things, I just want that for other people. I see so many people out there struggling, and honestly, I just want to be the guy in the next lane, reaching over and saying, hey, there's a better way. There's a way to do that. You don't have to sacrifice your family. You don't have to sacrifice your performance, your dreams, your goals. You can do both. There's a way to do that, and TriAthletes that way. What TriAthletes does is it gives to athletes a bunch of things. The increased performance gains per training hour. You're going to have better race day performances with an average of 20 to 30% fewer training hours. And you'll have a dramatic decrease in injuries due to overuse and overtraining. You're going to have greater and more enjoyment of the sport, and you're going to have more time for family, friends, career, anything, all your other priorities, whatever that means to you. And you're probably wondering, during the whole time that Terry and I were talking, I was sitting down, we were going through kind of analytically the approach to swimming and triathlon training, and now I'm standing up. I mean, I'm just so excited. I just want to share with people how they can realize this and how they can benefit. When I got started, TriAthletes didn't exist. It wasn't there. That clarity was not there. Everyone relied on educated guesses and assumptions and theories and concepts and just trying to apply them the best they could. We don't have to do that anymore. And I'm so confident in that, for a lot of reasons. One, that we've invested the time. This is like I said, a passion and a mission of mine. I want to have other people share the same benefits that I have, and I'm all in. I'm fully invested in what we're doing, and that is just years and years of research and R&D to develop the systems and the data and analysis to come up with the algorithms and all the things that we use. We've spent tens of thousands of dollars literally on patent work, international patents to protect our innovations because the investments have been so high. When we actually tried to deploy our training plans, and we couldn't. There's a training logging company, a communication tool out there that's web-based, and everyone would recognize the name. But when I went to start using that to deploy our training plans, it just literally couldn't take in. I couldn't import custom plans. I couldn't manage the metrics that we managed because they were proprietary, and we innovated them and developed them. And no system out there can even accommodate sharing that. You can't load it into another online system. So at that point, we had to invest and build our own online training schedule so that athletes and coaches could communicate with one another, and those training plans could be deployed via the web. We were using Excel spreadsheets before that because they had all these spreadsheets that did all the calculations. It's the only way we could do it. So we had an enormous, literally greater than six-figure investment just in getting the technology in place to be able to deploy these plans. So the patents, the types of things that are different and only found in TriAthletes. One is I mentioned earlier that normalized and scaled assessment values. So you're able to assess athletes in the same way consistently across thousands of training plans and programs and cycles, and you're able to come up with predictors because now we can connect each one of those performances with all of their parameters, their body weight and their body composition, and come up with predictors. People going through exactly this type of training with these types of parameters at this age are going to increase this much by this much training load and this much focus on the bike or the run or the swim, and then how you measure workload and training stress metrics, and that those are particular to the individual person and their workload capacity, and these concepts that I can go more into detail with, and as athletes become more familiar with the program, they can see that, but it's just not out there, and it takes a while to describe. But what we get from all that data and the metrics and the methodology are these algorithms that we use during the training program design process, so that we're able to produce these and build these plans based on our database of results and metrics and thresholds of how to manipulate those training variables according to the athlete's parameters, and do so in a way that's going to give them the optimal results with none of the waste. And so we have a dynamic feedback mechanism. So we're constantly, every athlete, when you go through TriAthletes, that data becomes meaningful and helps improve the system and makes it smarter and better. Because just like Terry said, if it's not measurable, it's not going to be repeatable or improvable, and it's not going to be consistent. We're able to do that with a systematic approach. And TriAthletes has become what it is today because of the results it's actually achieved. It's already achieved these results, and it continues to do so in a repeatable fashion. So that's why I can confidently tell you and just implore you to check it out. And I want what I experienced and the benefit for me and the hundreds of athletes that have come before you. I just want that for every single person within the sound of my voice. I'm just so passionate about that. I want to be that guy in the lane next to you, just reaching over and saying, I care about you. I want what I have. I want you to have that too. And so that's what I'm doing today through this approach, and just sharing it with you, and investing the time to to do this webinar and let you know the system is applicable to athletes of any level. This is one of our. I'm not going to play these videos. We have as many as you want to see, and this is one of our pro athletes. He did his Ironman PR 834, Ironman 70.3 PR 350. He's been a TriAthletes athlete for a little more than 2 years. Just exceptional athletes. Overall in the pro field, second at Augusta, fifth at Singapore, fifth at Steelhead 70.3, second American last year, Ironman Arizona. Just phenomenal. But it wasn't designed for. This wasn't designed for pro athletes. It's applicable, but it's designed for you and me, the age groupers. Those of us that are out there that have can't do this full time, that have competing jobs and all the other things that go on in life. TriAthletes athletes receive custom training plans designed specifically for them. Your body does have to obey the laws of physics, just like the grits, and things that you do during your training sessions. They matter, and they matter greatly, and they make all the difference in the world. And we develop custom TriAthletes system training programs for every single person, no cookie cutters and no guesswork. And you're going to have access, athletes have access to triathletes.com, the resources on there, and the videos, and just to learn and get more educated on the system and how it works. And we have a RaceX tool set that ties specifically your training and your race rehearsals to actual race execution plans. So on race day, you know exactly how to fuel and to cool and to pace yourself, so you're going to get that optimal result. So it's predictable, and you can repeat it race after race after race and get more and more confident going in, knowing you know exactly what to do, and you know exactly what you're training to that point based on your assessments and your training data, what kind of performance that's going to produce. There's no more guessing. You're going to have a dedicated TriAthletes coach, and they're going to work with you on our platform. So you're going to have your platform online and looking at that, and they're going to be able to comment, look at it, and give you feedback and help you work through schedule adjustments or travel changes, and all of that's available in different coaching packages, just based on whatever your desired level of communication and services are. If you're pretty much give me a plan and I'll follow it and check in with you in a few months, we have that package. If you want daily, weekly, monthly, whatever your interaction level is and your desire for that, then we have a package that fits that, and it's going to match that. So every athlete's going to get the same TriAthletes system custom program built for them off the same engine that does that for each single person. But then you're going to have that dedicated one-on-one relationship with the coach that's going to know you intimately and be able to answer your questions and just give you that white glove treatment, just take you through the process and just enrich your whole triathlon experience. Your time, your performance, your health is just worth it. There's just a better way, and this blend of the coaching and the system and the technology that we've been able to bring together, it's just incredible, and I just so encourage you to check it out. And the way that we bring on new athletes is an onboarding process, and we found it to be just incredibly beneficial. And rather than just herding people in and saying, figure it out, here you go, it's actually, we invest a whole lot in this process. It's a 7-day trial. And actually, you're not going to train a lot for 7 days. You're not going to have that performance improvement in a 7-day period. But it's just really an in-depth look to help you ensure that every single athlete gets the most out of the tryout system that they can. And it starts with us making the investment in you. So we go first. We're going to have consultations with you where you're going to talk with the QA, with the training advisor. That's going to be a personal phone call with you to answer your questions and explain how it works. You're going to have access to the athlete-only area of triathletes.com. There's videos that talk about the assessments and why they're important and how to do them. You're going to have your plan, your training schedule, and be able to move those around and get those scheduled. So you're going to have a consultation with your coach. It's a personal one-on-one where you're going to be talking about your athlete profile and your background and your goals and how should you structure your next season and what your phases look like and which one's next and that kind of advice. That's all. We do all that up front. And then you're going to have your tryout assessments for the swim, bike, and run. We're going to use those. Those will determine your training paces, whether you're using power or just paces or heart rate or RPE, rating of perceived exertion, whatever your level of metrics are when you're managing your own sessions, whatever it is, we're going to help you determine that. That's all done on our website with our coach's help. And then we're going to have a follow-up consultation. Again, this is a third personal phone call that you're going to have with a training advisor to answer any questions to ensure that you have just an incredible fit with your coach and that you understand everything and just get you started off right to make sure that everything is as you expect. And obviously, this is a huge investment on our part up front, and we're very confident in doing that and offering that. One, because we believe in it. Our athletes, I think industry averages, an athlete will stay with a coach or program about 9 months. Our average is way more than twice that, and it would be longer if we'd been around longer. So it's only been a few years that we've been doing this. Data goes back about 10 years. But offering this on larger scale has only been the past couple of years, and just hundreds of athletes have gone through at that point in time, and they stay, they keep going. Their goals don't change. They still want to be healthy. They still want to be productive. They still want to increase their performance and achieve those goals and keep their life in balance. So none of those things stay, and they get such value that they just stay with us and for a long time, and we just value that so much, and that's just the ultimate seal of approval for us is that our athletes stay with us and just that we're able to serve them just for many, many months and years. So we're obviously offering this value of a 7-day trial, not for $659, but we just charge a small fee just for those that are serious about their improvement and really want to have these benefits and to experience this in their life. A small fee of $7 for the complete 7-day trial. And this is not one of those that we're automatically going to renew or sign you for anything else. There is no if at the end of that 7 days you want to pass, no problem at all. There's no obligation, nothing to cancel, no further charge, no action whatsoever on your part at all. We're just so confident that at the end of that, when you see it and you learn that you'll move forward. We're confident in that. And if you choose not to, that's totally fine. We just wish you the best. And at some point in the future, when circumstances change or things change, that we just hope you'll remember us at that time and give us the opportunity to serve you then. And we'll just move forward whenever that is. So I just encourage you to sign up, to click on triathletes.com/sign up and get going. We're just ready right now to serve you. We'll schedule your first orientation call just immediately, give you immediate access to the site, and you can start checking it out and watching the videos and learn more and learn how this can just truly change your life, starting right away. And like I mentioned, we showed the professional athlete, but this is for beginners. This is someone who's been with Triathletes just this year as a beginner. She improved her 15-mile time trial by almost 10 minutes, by more than 8 minutes, just in the first 3 months. And she finished her first sprint, a very beginner, brand new to the sport, was finished 13 in her age group out of 26 athletes, and then 2 months later in an Olympic, 32nd out of 57 in a very large 2,000-plus person race. It's a huge race, but just to do phenomenal with no run background, no cycling background, no swim background. She's actually a level 10 gymnast. And then age groupers for all different levels. This age group elite athlete out of Kansas here in the U.S. and he improved his 15-mile. Already a great athlete, improved his Branson time by 18 minutes. On that same course, and his 15-mile bike time trial assessment went down from a 42:45 to 38. That's a fast time already, and to get it further down. And this is a mid-40s guy. This is not a young guy. So at that age, improving that much. And with a very strong run, a 21-minute 5K, taking that down to 19:52, that's a substantial improvement. And to do so in a way that balances the rest of your life, and you're able to be an executive and work and not have to make those sacrifices that just aren't necessary. Here's another one, Robin Campbell. She finished faster than when she was 4 years younger, and 13th out of 108 at Ironman Florida, under 12-hour finish. You see these monster gains, 4 hours or 4-minute improvement here, a minute on the swim, 4 minutes improvements on the bike, and a 2-minute improvement on the run, which is already a strong athlete. Watch out, women's 50 to 54 age group next year. But in the 60s, men in their 60s finishing 4th at Ironman 70.3 Texas in his age group. He did triathlons about 10 to 15 years ago. He says he's faster now in his 60s than he was back in his late 40s. It's just across the board, every age group, every body style and body composition and performance level and background. Here's another athlete, one of our Canadian athletes, who finished his first Ironman, 13 months training, in 11:45. And he only had one training week with more than 15 hours. And that's a challenging course for his first Ironman to be 11:45. It's just incredible without the background in the sport. So what next? We just invite you to take us up on the 7-day trial. It's now open on a first-come basis. It's a small one-time fee of $7. Nothing to cancel, no obligation anyway. Just cancel if you want to pass, just no problem at all. But we're just confident that you're not going to do that. Again, I've been there. I've worked with random plans, cookie-cutter plans, and just guessed and try to trial and error figure it out, and I'll pay that price. And there's just a better way. The investment has been made. We've invested the research. I've invested the research and the finances and the resources. We've sought out the best coaches that are just passionate and dedicated. They love people, and they love seeing the progressions and just helping you reach your goals. And we've done all that. All the athletes that have come before and submitted their assessments and their data and gone through the training, all of that volume and massive intelligence is there ready. When I get started, it wasn't there. It's there now. And I want to shout it from the rooftops. There's a better way. There's a better way. And just like the guy that introduced me to TI, Terry, I'm just so appreciative of that. If I could see him again, I haven't seen him since. If I could see him again, I thank him. And I just, gosh, my dream is 5-10 years, down the road, and this happens some now, but I just want people coming up to me and to our coaches and everyone just says, thank you, this made such a difference in my life, and here's what I was able to do, and the happiness and the joy and the health and all that comes from it. I just want that for you so much. And the expectation literally is that everyone that comes to know and realize that this is available, that they just take us up, and that we move forward, and that you give us an opportunity to serve you. So we're pausing our training right now. We're reaching across the lane line to you and letting you know there is a better way, and we're here and ready to leverage our technology and our resources and the intelligence in our system and our passion and desire to serve and to help you reach your goals and accomplish everything that you want to in triathlon and as a person and as an athlete. So I know that that's a very passionate appeal, and know that it just comes straight from the heart. It didn't start out that way. It started out as just me wanting this for me wanting to benefit and to achieve these. But gosh, we've just seen so much, and we've seen the lives that have touched it, and we just want to offer it to you. So that's what we're doing today. And Terry, I just appreciate the opportunity to present with you and the impact that you made on my thinking early on, and the approach to training and not settling for just doing what everyone else is doing. So I just thank you for doing that, and appreciate the opportunity to present with you. So thank you.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed seeing Jeff lay out and describe his program. As I said, I see a tremendous amount of philosophical and methodological simpatico between both Immersion and Triathletes, and I really do encourage you to check out the 7-day trial that Jeff is offering today. So Jeff, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Terry.
Okay, my pleasure to be here.
Well, we thank everyone for attending. Have a wonderful evening, and train smart.